In this video, we'll be going over some of the highs and the lows of Dragon's Dogma 2. The game was released roughly 6 months ago, and recently there was a big balance and optimization patch released. With that in mind, let's get started. So what exactly is Dragon's Dogma 2? Dragon's Dogma 2 is an open world RPG with 3 optional party members, or in this game, they're called pawns. There's a set of classes to choose from for yourself and your pawns, and the game will go from being extremely easy or a bit difficult depending on your choices that you make. More on that when we get to the difficulty of the game later on. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a gorgeous game that was really muddled with a lot of controversy on release. It was poorly optimized, players questioned a lot of the microtransaction choices, and things just kind of snowballed from there. There was a lot of hate on the game, some warranted, some not so much warranted. Personally, I've poured about 350 or so hours into this game with multiple playthroughs, and well, here are my thoughts. And there's chapters below if you would like to skip around. First off, let's talk about the control and the gameplay. The control of Dragon's Dogma 2 will not feel foreign to anyone who has played a Capcom game in the past 10 years. It has that clunky feel to it, much like Monster Hunter World, but once you get used to it, movement really does feel fairly good. You'll notice a bit of float animation on character pivots and such, and while this glaringly shows when you're in a tight spot, say on top of a guard tower, fighting harpies, something of that nature in tight corridors, you really do kind of notice a little bit of a annoyance with the controls, but overall it's really nothing super jarring. The controls and the combat feel actually really good in this game. The control and flow of combat, that's where this game really truly shines. There's no real lock-on system, so you're aiming most if not all of your moves and abilities. There will be times when you absolutely miss an attack, and there will be other times when you land it perfectly with a long shot from above, each feeling equally sad and amazing. There's somewhat of an aim helper with a tracking on certain attacks, which will kind of just pull you in a certain direction depending on, what move it is. But for the most part, you're free aiming all of your abilities. Now, this doesn't make it hard. It just makes it very engaging in my opinion. Combat against boss creatures in this game is the real bread and butter of the game. There's a handful of boss types that you'll encounter multiple times through exploring or through story progression, most of which are repeatable after a few days' time. And these are some of the most fun moments that you're going to have in the game. Now, one boss fight in particular that we can go over just to showcase is the Griffin fight. There's a lot of different ways that you can deal with a Griffin in this game. And most players, when you first encounter a Griffin, it's going to end up with the monster just flying away after taking some damage. A little bit frustrating, for sure, but eventually you're going to learn that if you use fire on a Griffin, for example, you're going to burn its wings, and that will prevent it from fleeing while its wings are on fire. So therefore you'd think to yourself, okay, well, I'll use fire against a Griffin, correct? Well, what if you don't have fire against a Griffin? What are your other options? Well, you can just jump on the thing and go for a ride on it. You can fly with it and just stab it in the head or pound it in the head whenever you want it to land somewhere, or you can ride with it all the way back to its nest and kill it there. There's a multitude of different options to handle different monsters in the game, and that's kind of where this game really does shine, in my opinion. Like I said, you can get a free taxi ride on this thing. That, in and of itself, a little fun way of fast traveling around, but that's just part of the exploration and understanding fights and whatnot in Dragon's Dogma 2 and what makes it so fun. But you can't have fun without having something that's not so fun. Performance and microtransactions. So on launch, the performance situation was pretty abysmal. The game's pretty big and has a lot of layers to it, and it used to choke out lesser CPUs in bigger cities. Even people with good rigs, PC rigs, they were running into issues a lot. NPCs were bottlenecking CPUs and causing all sorts of issues from chugging to just outright crashes. For one, I got really lucky. I didn't have really any issues at all on launch. Console users, they were also kind of suffering a bit from low performance, but from what I remember, it was just mostly PC players. Now, from the 17th of, or as of the 17th of September, Dragon's Dogma 2 received a really hefty patch for class balances and some really, really big optimization changes. From what I've heard from the community, this absolutely fixed most of what players were suffering from, the low frame rates, the crashes, etc. I'm not certain that things are 100% fixed, but like I said, from the community, I've heard nothing but positive things about this patch. Now, onward to the microtransactions. This is a fun one. Now, this list that you see right here is a list of everything that you can get in Dragon's Dogma 2. Most of everything that you see on that list, you can purchase in-game with in-game currency, and it's purchased very easily, even very early. So, outside of the Dragon's Dogma 1 sound effects and the music that you can buy, everything on that list is obtainable in-game. It's not even really a grind to do it. The only thing, and I mean the only thing on that list that I see that is very questionable is the port crystal. So with port crystals, there's a very limited number of these that you can find in game, and they act as a fast travel point that you can place anywhere on the map. They're a really strong item if you're into fast traveling a lot and getting from point A to point B. But having that in the shop, I agree, that is pretty crappy. But that's literally the only thing that is even questionable in the microtransaction shops. Look, I don't like microtransactions either. I wish they weren't a thing, but they're not going anywhere. I think that they're traps. I think they bring games down overall, just to line more pockets with money. But, you know, we're not escaping microtransactions anytime soon. But I will truthfully say, without a question, this shop is far from one of the, most predatory shops out there. This microtransaction shop, though it sucks, it's not nearly as bad as the rest of the ones that I've seen in other games, for example. I've seen way, way worse. Now, to get more of the bad knocked out of the way, we'll go ahead and get on with the story. The best part of most RPGs is the story. Well, Dragon's Dogma 2 is not one of those. The story in this game is decent at best. It's not the best story, it's not the worst story. It's not really intriguing, and for the most part, your enjoyment is going to be coming from exploring and fighting. The story absolutely is nothing to write home over, but that being said, there is some emotional moments that happen mainly towards the end in the story, and it depends on how invested you get. They will hit you. Like, there's one point near the very end that's actually just kind of, I will just say outright, it's kind of depressing. But, obviously not spoiling anything story-wise, there are some good moments, but mostly it's kind of forgettable. Me personally, I enjoyed the story for what it was, but, it's no Shakespearean novel or anything. Now, there is some romances that you can do as well in the game. I didn't really mess with that too much. It's nothing major. Dragon's Dogma 1, I felt like had a better romance system overall, but it's there if you want it. You can give flowers to people if you want to, and they'll like you and they'll blush. That's about the gist of it all right there. And now we come to visuals and sound. Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the more beautiful games out there. Now, it's no Space Marines 2 or anything of that nature, but honestly, the scope of the game and the setting of the game is absolutely gorgeous. You have this kind of medieval setting with, lush forests and desert regions, like a really red region you go to later on in the game, but it's all in all very, very beautiful. It's one of the best looking games that I've played coming from a PC standpoint. I know some console users are saying that some textures look bad, but that's console gaming for you. The animations, especially in combat, I feel like are fairly fluid. They look great. Finishing animations feel really visceral, and the slowdown effect when you get a kill shot on something is it just feels great. Capcom really put a lot of love into their visuals for Dragon's Dogma 2. It's not, the best looking game ever, but it's absolutely gorgeous and it's worthy of a brag for sure. Now, going over music and sound effects, the sound is there, it sounds great. Music, in my opinion, is very good. I think it's very fitting for the situations that you're in. Towards the end, there's some piano tracks that sound absolutely amazing, in my opinion. The intro areas, like the sound is there. I wish there was more. That's my only complaint. I feel like it is limited, but I think overall the music really sets kind of the tone for the areas that you're in. I just wish that there was more. I really feel like it's kind of gutted as far as that's concerned. But overall, I'm very happy with the visuals and pretty happy with the music as well. Next up is the pawn system, and I really feel like the pawn system is a shining moment in this game. Pawns are characters that you and others create. You make one main character and you make one main pawn. Your main pawn will go on adventures with other players if they're summoned to do their part. You can summon up to 3 pawns, your main pawn, and 2 other summoned player-made pawns to fill out your party. Now, your party is either going to struggle or they're going to thrive depending on the classes that you select, but for the most part, things are fairly simple. Pawns are, to me, the main characters of the game. You're going to laugh, you're going to rage, you will cheer at your pawns all throughout your journey. They can be some of the dumbest NPCs ever, and 1 minute later absolutely stun you with a brilliant move. Pawns learn as you progress as well. If you do a quest with your pawn and it gets summoned by another player, your pawn can actually lead them around and help them finish said quest, giving them hints and whatnot. The more monsters that your pawns kill, the more efficient they are at killing them, especially bosses. So they kind of learn as they go. They learn elemental weaknesses and such, and the more they fight, the more they figure out about weaknesses of bosses. Pawns will also learn where treasure chests and things are on the map. So if your pawn is summoned in a world and that player finds a chest that you don't have, your pawn will make mention of this and lead you to it even if you're in the vicinity of it in your world. Pawns, in my opinion, are absolutely the best part of Dragon's Dogma 2. 100%. Some of my most memorable moments come from my pawn Reese, and if you check our YouTube shortlist out, you'll see some of her glorious moments and her blunders. There's quite a lot there. So if you'd like a laugh, go check out Reese Adventures on our YouTube Shorts page. Next up, let's go over Vocations. So Vocations, or classes, I don't know, they're called Vocations in Dragon's Dogma. They kind of fill that fantasy role for you. Do you want to tank Dragon's Fire with your shield out in front of you, saving your pawns from being roasted behind you? You can do that. Do you want to play more of a support role? Do you want to enchant your party's weapons with elements while you also heal them? You can do that. Do you absolutely want to chunk enemies with a huge sword or big mace? Well, you can do that too. There's a lot of vocations in Dragon's Dogma 2, and we may get more with DLC if we get DLC, but you can literally play how you like. You can play as a tank, a healer, a support, range damage, melee damage, spellcaster. You can even make your enemies see things and run off cliffs later on with the Trickster vocation. Each class, they play way different, like very, very different. My personal favorites are Fighter and Warrior, and although they're both melee, they play way different from one another. You're still in the face swinging, but the Fighter, the tank, just having a shield at the ready changes the entire dynamic between parrying, perfect parrying, timings, etc. It just makes it way different. Warrior, on the other hand, you have to be very methodical with your swings because, well, their swings are slow but very powerful. Or you can just kind of go unga bunga and KO everything to oblivion once you get a little bit stronger with the class. But, the choice is yours. Overall, Vocations, they just keep the replayability happening in the game. There's so many different vocations. I'm not going to go over all of them, but, that's the gist of it. You can look up on Dragon's Dogma's website, different vocations, what they do, etc. But there's a lot there. There's a lot of grind as well to level each vocation up. Next on the list is difficulty. Difficulty's a big one. One of the biggest downfalls of Dragon's Dogma 2 is the difficulty. Everyone has been clamoring for a hard mode, and we actually got trolled with the patch on September 17th with a casual mode option. Currently, if you play through the game as recommended, you're not gonna lose any sort of like a real challenge. Or you're not going to see any real challenge in the game after your first like Drake fight, typically. You have 3 main pawns that you can summon, or well, 1 main pawn and 2 other pawns to summon, and it makes the game fairly easily, especially if you have sorcerers involved. Some vocations are absolutely overpowered. They trivialize the game immensely, such as Magic Archer, for example. Some things in the game absolutely need to be toned down for the sake of still having fun, but honestly, the difficulty is what you make of it. You can absolutely challenge yourself in the game. I consider myself fairly decent at the game, and I'm currently doing a no death, no brine fall, no fairy stone, 1 main pawn challenge. And really, it's not easy. Like, I've been struggling. I feel like the amount of pawns that you can use, they kind of act as a difficulty slider. The less that you run with, the more challenging the game will feel. Now, that being said, the game will inevitably become easy. Once you have enough levels under your belt, like if your character level is 90 plus, nothing's going to really challenge you in the game at all. New Game Plus doesn't up the difficulty either. This is Dragon Dogma 2's biggest flaw in my opinion. I'm hoping, if we get a DLC, that this will change. Also, just a easy reminder here, another thing that's kind of annoying that I'll tackle onto this. You only get 1 save file, and I have no idea why. I know Dragon's Dogma 1 did the same thing. I think it's a stupid decision. Multiple save files are kind of a must with RPGs, in my opinion. Granted, at least on PC, you can back up save files and make multiples manually, but it's still annoying. There should be an option in game to have multiple game files already. Now, another downfall to Dragon's Dogma 2 is monster variety. This is a big flaw to this game. Throughout your adventure, you're going to bump into the same set of monsters and then the same set but different colors. It's not as bad as Breath of the Wild, for example, but it's pretty noticeable. You're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of goblin and wolf kills by the end of the game. There's only a handful of boss monsters that you're going to encounter, and even those are replicated at some point with a different skin. Me personally, this doesn't bother me that much because the battles themselves are the real treat. Smaller enemies, sure, I get that. They're annoying, they're just there. Bigger boss enemies though, the sheer number of ways to kill them is what keeps it fresh for me. Pushing them into the water, blasting them out of the air, pushing them into rocks, throwing rocks to knock them out. That's all fun to me. So the monster variety argument, though I get it, I understand. The ways that you tackle each fight is what, for me personally, keeps it fresh. Now for my favorite aspect of the game, that would be exploration. Exploring in DD2 is a big point of complaints from numerous players. Here's my honest opinion on exploring in this game. It's one of the best things about this game. It really is. Exploring in this game, there's so much to uncover. If you progress through this game slowly, you explore every cave, you backtrack, you comb through areas for more seeker tokens or chests or more caves, you 100% every time will be rewarded with upgrades. One of the biggest complaints in the beginning was the lack of exciting loot and treasure chests. A lot of chests, yeah, I agree, they do have bland loot. They can't all be upgrades, right? But if you play the game steadily instead of rushing, the loot actually feels great. It's my belief that a lot of players have been complaining about this. They're probably your run-of-the-mill gamers of today. Of course, you're going to ruin your experience and your challenge and your playthrough if you watch a YouTube video on what the best weapon and armor is and how to get it ASAP. Then rush to that area, get it, then get on the internet and complain that the game is too easy and not rewarding enough. Well, of course it is when you spoil yourself like that. This game is best enjoyed and played without a extra life hand-holding the whole way. Take it slow, do it blind. You'll love it, I promise. The world is absolutely huge and there's a lot to dig into. Caves will look alike. Sure, they're caves. It's not Elden Ring copy-paste, but, you know, they're very similar. The caves, they're brown. They're caves. They're underground for the most part, right? I don't know. I feel like a lot of the exploration arguments just do not make sense to me, and I really truly believe that that's coming from a lot of gamers who really just look up guides before the game comes out. You said guide. This is the strongest item. I'm going to get that. Oh no, this game's too easy. What do you think? Of course it is. Come on. And now, finally, my ending thoughts on Dragon's Dogma 2. As of today, Dragon's Dogma 2 sits on Steam with mixed reviews. With the performance issues that marred the game pre-patch, I can totally agree with that. I also can't help but roll my eyes at the players who still complain about the microtransactions. They're not predatory, they really aren't, and there's nothing in the shop that you can't find very easily in the game. Dragon's Dogma 2, it's absolutely worth your time. If you're the type of gamer that wants to get lost in a world, explore it to its fullest, glaze over the story, and enjoy fighting big monsters in a multitude of ways, I would highly recommend you stay away from any YouTube game guides or wiki sites out there because they will absolutely ruin the game for you. Most games have ways to stop you from trivializing the difficulty. Dragon's Dogma 2 does not. You can put the game on super easy mode if you really want to right out of the gate. In the end, it's all in how you want to play it, and the game gives you a ton of freedom on how you want to play it. Like I said, if you're looking for exploration, a big adventure to go on, go into this blind. I promise you, you will probably enjoy it. I hope this video gives a little bit of clarity to those not sure on trying out Dragon's Dogma 2. It has been a great experience for myself, but I understand it also has its issues. Regardless, thank you for watching. Take care.